We are going to get started with FIATECH's weekly Emerging Technology webinar series. And this morning, for the next hour, we are going to have a presentation from Bob Weibel, who leads the Alliance at FIATECH, looking at streamlining the regulatory process. And with him, we have Judy Passwaters, who is the Global Director for DuPont Facilities and Real Estate out of Wilmington, and Henry Kozarski, who is with the Wisconsin Department of Commerce, Department of Safety and Buildings. Before we get started, I see that some of you are new. I want to just quickly explain how this works and what to expect. Because the system is set up to accommodate a large number of individuals, you're all defaulted to be on mute. So there is no way that you can speak and be heard. We learned that the hard way over a few trials with this, but what you can do in the way the system's been set up is there's a question and answer tab on your toolkit. And you can type any question anytime. That'll actually go to me, so the person presenting isn't distracted with it. And throughout the course of the next hour, Henry and Judy and Bob will just pause and we'll take any questions that you have and answer them. They will also provide their contact information so you can email them or call them following the presentation. And we will also make the presentation available for download at a later date, hopefully later this afternoon from our website. So, if you have any questions, any at all, regarding the system or regarding the presentation, preferably, just type it in under the question and answer, and your questions will remain anonymous. I'll simply ask the question, not who's asking or from what company. And let's go ahead and get started with Bob. Thank you, Bob, too, for Bob and Judy and Henry. We appreciate this, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Well, thank you, Nicole. And this is Bob Weibel, and some of you who are on the line already are fairly familiar with the Alliance for Building Regulatory Reform in the Digital Age. And we have with us, joining us, Judith Passwaters, who has been a longtime member of FIATECH and very much responsible for the development of the FIATECH technology roadmap we'll be talking about later on. And Henry Kozarski, and Henry is a building official for the state of Wisconsin, and is also the chair of AIA's Codes and Standards Committee. So Henry is actually going to serve two functions today. He's going to talk a little bit about this from the perspective of AIA, as well as a building official whose job really is to interface with all of the local units of government in Wisconsin that adopt and enforce the statewide building code. And I'll go ahead, and you should be able to see the PowerPoint presentation on your screen as we move forward. And our presentation today is going to introduce the FIATECH project to streamline the building regulatory and land use process. We're going to talk a bit about the benefits of streamlining and information technology. We're going to take then a look at the interface of the regulatory system with the FIATECH Capital Facilities Technology Roadmap. And I'll talk a bit more about what that means and its importance to everybody. And then Judy will be going into much greater detail in the presentation. And then lastly, we want to close with an invitation for you all to participate in the work of the Alliance at FIATECH. And we'll talk about some tools and resources that are available to you and your community or your company that you can use to start working on right away. The Alliance is really a private-public partnership. It was formed in the summer of 2001, actually at a series of meetings, a day-and-a-half conference that we held over in Arlington, Virginia, to look at what are the barriers to jurisdictions making more effective use of information technology in making their building administration and enforcement programs more effective. And then we followed up at the National Governors Association. They hosted a session where we put together a private-public partnership comprised of sort of an alphabet soup of both governmental agencies at the state and local level, and also associations representing the various aspects of the construction industry. And we more recently have added private sector firms and companies as members, and we have just recently opened it up to state and local government entities as well. And our whole purpose was really to share best practices to improve government effectiveness and efficiency, specifically looking at ways that information technology can be used to help that in particular. And we've been providing streamlining materials since 2001 that have really begun to reduce regulatory costs and time frames for jurisdictions as well as their clients by 40 to 60%. This is our mission, to enhance public safety, disaster resilience, and economic competitiveness through streamlining. And by streamlining, we do not mean regulatory abandonment. We mean making the system more effective and efficient. And then, where appropriate, applying information technology. Some of you, day to day, live this responsibility, whether it's in your company or it's in a state or local government agency. And we've really been, since the 1990s, dealing with this whole series of major forces impacting all of us in both the construction industry and in government. Economic, changing role of our country in the global economy, and currently we can add this recession issue. Reduced resources, reduced demands, and downsizing in government. Public safety has at the same time become much more important, both in terms of building, design, and construction day-to-day operations, but now we are spending more time looking at the impact of natural disasters and terrorism on the built environment. And demographics. We have a very shifting population in terms of age and net immigration. Environmental, energy costs, reduced resources depletion, global warming, and of course the price of oil, and technology. All of these are six major forces that are impacting all of us that actually got us to start looking at how do we help state and local governments and the construction industry deal with the impacts of these forces on their day-to-day operations. And the construction industry has been fairly aggressive in dealing with those kinds of forces. Basic process has been to try to build faster, better, safer, and at less cost. And they've been doing things like research and applying new technologies and materials, building sensors, nanotechnology. Some of you are very familiar with the work that's ongoing at NIST. Green building and the rating system and the issue of sustainability in the construction industry. Building information modeling, supply chain integration over life cycle buildings, which we'll talk a bit more in this presentation. And FIATECH itself, and FIATECH came into existence about 7 years ago. It's fully integrated advanced technology. It is for the capital facilities industry initially, although they now have other companies as members. They really came about to take a look at what can be done to enable in the whole life cycle of a building, better use of technology, whether it's information technology or other types of technology, to enable the buildings to be built at less cost, be more effective and efficient in their operations, from design concepts all the way through to construction, commissioning, operation, maintenance, and then ultimately to demolition. This little map, which Judy is going to go into much greater detail, is a visual of their vision of integrated and automated capital projects industry, and which they call their roadmap, and we'll talk a bit more specifically about that later on in the presentation. What's government's response been to these pressures, these forces? Well, we have been doing surveys over the last 8 years of the use of information technology, and nationwide we're up to about 10% of jurisdictions that adopt and enforce building codes using IT for something more than sort of glorified word processing. Only 2% of that total are allowing for electronic submission of plans, although that number is beginning to move forward. Less than 1% are doing any kind of electronic reviews, and less than 4% of the jurisdictions are using any kind of mobile field inspection technology. The downside, of course, is that since you have so little number of jurisdictions, although some of those are fairly large in population, there's a near total lack of interoperability of building data within the same jurisdiction. Many cases we're finding that the police, that the fire and the building department and public works and the planning department are not interconnected at all and sharing data. And there's virtually no interoperability between jurisdictions where the data is being shared, for example, in a disaster response and recovery mode where jurisdictions can work together. An example of the problem, and Henry will talk a bit more about this, is that in 2005, a conference held at the General Services Administration in Washington, D.C., had a group called the Virtual Builders Roundtable talk about some exciting work that they'd been doing, building buildings using 3D and 4D, the data linked to construction team, supply and contractors, and being able to do this through building information modeling with no printed blueprints, no shop drawings, and no change orders until they interfaced with the local building department. And then, despite the fact that this was a building department in California that was moving and using information technology for permitting, there was no progress at that stage in terms of electronic plans review. So then they had to print out the hard copy of the blueprints, do several iterations of plans review, shop drawings, inspections, and re-inspections. And it resulted in, of course, numerous change orders, corrections, and time delays. In short, we may have BIM, and with it the construction industry owners are beginning to see an increase in their productivity, but then bam, we get no overall boom in construction in our nation simply because state and local governments just are not at the stage where they can interact with building information modeling, and that is something that is very much in the forefront of our minds, FIATECH's mind, and the minds of a number of groups that we're working with, including the International Code Council, and their efforts to develop a series of electronic plan check tools for all of the family of the ICC codes. So there really is a need for all this, for greater efficiency. We all share it. These are some of the basic problems that we end up because we're not able to do this at this stage. Higher construction costs than normal, longer construction time, higher than necessary regulatory portion of construction costs, and we've been able to actually document well that jurisdictions that are effectively using, that have first of all done some business process reengineering to make sure their system is working right, that they're able to then apply information technology to various aspects of codes administration enforcement, and they're seeing 60% reduction in time to take a building through the construction process. So why aren't we taking actions? The cost and impacts of this are really kind of hidden because most of them happen one day at a time, one building at a time, one company at a time in over 50,000 jurisdictions across the country. And up until Katrina, we really don't tend to see the cumulative impact of this. But then when you get a disaster of the magnitude of Katrina, you really see that an effective and efficient building regulatory system, and of course much of the region devastated did not even have a building code system, that if you'd had a better code system, you might have had less damage and destruction than what otherwise occurred. I'm now going to turn this over to Henry, and Henry is actually joining us from the ICC meetings in California, and he's going to talk about the view of all of this from state and local governments, and then also from the design community.
Oh, Henry? But before you do that, Bob, could we have a question?
Yeah, if there are any questions on that sort of general overview.
Okay, we have a question. Please clarify the difference between electronic plan check and auto code check. Isn't electronic plan check considered by many as simply getting a set of plans via electronic submittal as opposed to a building information model?
No one is using a building information model per se. People are doing, right now, they're doing reviews of 2D drawings electronically, which have been received electronically or were received in hard copy and then scanned into a database for the jurisdiction. And then basically through a system of layering, they are able to write the comments on top of those plans and send them back to the architect or the engineering firm, and be able to do it online, so that it is electronic. But at this stage, we are not into the point where either BIM is fully developed or the resources materials are available to do any kind of a 3D or 4D building information modeling design review. But that we're all working in that direction.
Great. Thanks, Bob.
Right. Henry?
You bet. Can everybody hear me okay? Bob or Nicole, can you guys hear?
Yep.
Is this thing working okay?
Here.
Good.
Sounds
I
good.
want to make sure all my connections are working before I start talking and somebody says, well, geez, where is he? So anyway, I want to thank you again for this opportunity and participating, and also being able to share two different perspectives. One, I'll put on the hat of the state of Wisconsin and Department of Commerce, Safety and Buildings Division, where we deal with plan review process and inspection procedures and regulatory, not only at the state level, but we also recognize the municipalities throughout the state of Wisconsin, 1,850 of them. At any given time, any one of those municipalities is involved in working as one of our agents, be it through commercial building, residential, plumbing, or electrical. And all the various things we have to address and challenges that need to be met through that process. I also am, like Mr. Weibel had mentioned, the chair of the AIA Codes and Standards Committee, and I'm very active and involved with the International Code Council and the Interoperability Task Group. The task group started a little over a year ago. Actually, I think it formed, this July will be the 2-year anniversary, but the work that's been done there is just, phenomenal, and the pace that it has happened at. So that's all a very positive thing. I basically would consider the slide here to look at tools, culture, and personnel. Really what you're dealing with here is, first of all, from the governmental side, you have to understand that the attitude has always been that once you go somewhere or go into something, that you really are putting all your efforts into that opportunity. And that's one of the things that's really been kind of difficult up until this point for governments to realize and get their arms around, from be it state or local level. Meaning that, just to take you back to the 80s and early 90s, I remember almost 10 years ago to the day in the state of Wisconsin, we realized that there was a lot of energy around CAD, and everybody was thinking about how CAD was going to revolutionize the process, and we were going to be able to submit plans electronically for review. And what we did is put together quite a think tank of local and even intergovernmental agencies in the state. And basically what we did is not prepare to drive the process or to put something out that was going to somehow be the steering, if it were to think of it that way. But we were going to be ready when the industry was going to be ready in response. Things like electronic stamping, signing and sealing of plans, the cultural impact on our reviewers, be it local or state, having to look at this scope as opposed to a set of plans. And with that came that real personnel consideration of a real paradigm shift for them to understand how to review plans, majority of which are individuals that came from industry or came from the private sector before CAD was even a tool. And now to not only be able to use this tool and function, but to be able to review plans with some level of confidence was a real challenge. We all know where that went, and really, in hindsight now, we look back and say, well, geez, CAD was a wonderful tool, and it was really just another way of drafting. And if you took it one step farther, it was really just an enhanced version of pin-bar drafting and everything that drawing was trying to do for many years. But it was still a two-dimensional concept that grew and began to grow, and it was what we know today as being building information models, where really all that electronic information has some intelligence built into it. So that was the first thing that really has been an issue, is having a tool that's going to be efficient and also is going to be able to communicate across all platforms. Again, in the governmental perspective, budgets and everything considered, to convince any agency or management structure or elected officials that an investment of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in hardware and software need to be made, when that same individual is probably purchasing computers and software in their own home, realizing that 3, 4, 5 years down the road, they're updating and having to change things out because of the expiration of its validity. Really becomes a difficult road. Now we have to look at the fact that the International Code Council really has made a real strong effort in developing the building information model check software tools, that which is going to, at the present time, all hopes are that communicate across all platforms. What about those barriers? Like I said, the next thing is to think about a cultural shift. It's not only the equipment and the financial, but it's also understanding that there's going to be a personnel and basically a major shift in how we work with our plants. I would add right now that the state of Wisconsin is really excited about this, has been working closely again with the International Code Council, and we anticipate shortly launching on our website, first a beta version where plan submittals and those plan submitters and people interested in trying model checking software will be able to go to our website and basically run through a practice. Okay, you basically submit a plan and through a model check software, and then you would receive a approval or letter for additional information. As we continue to move towards giving people the opportunity to ultimately run through, they have a building information model, run through model checking software, and then ultimately we would be able to accept that as a passing model and then move forward with the approval process. State of Wisconsin is a little bit different maybe in some jurisdictions, and maybe it's just like other jurisdictions depending on where you are, meaning that we are involved in plan review and approval. Local municipalities deal with the permitting process. So when it comes to those barriers in government, again, it's an integration, it's a commitment, and finally, it's a communication issue. Other operational barriers are getting away culturally from paper, recognizing that are we really going to have a rolled-up set of plans, or are we going to recognize an electronic version of a set of construction documents? I think somewhat related to the governmental view is also the task of understanding the intellectual property and the ownership of those documents, but I'll talk about that in the next slide. Right now, for example, in many municipalities, you can go to the municipality and not only look at copies of permits that were issued years ago and look at the building records, but you may also be able to go and look at the building plans that were submitted, probably in a microfiche format, but that record keeping is still there. Becky Baker, who's actually here at the code hearings now, we were talking yesterday, Colorado still maintains the requirement that the state is the caretaker of all construction documents for commercial buildings that are built. That is one of the barriers that need to be overcome. A majority of municipalities still require ink and signature on plans. That is a barrier that needs to be overcome. Now, is that something for government to challenge? I'm going to be quick to say not always, because the industry will ask for what it needs to function efficiently, and then government responds. Just like we did 10 years ago when we got our think tank together, we realized that, you know what, this train is coming. Modesto Tavares, an architect out of Madison, Wisconsin, his line for that situation is, the train is coming. Are we going to be ready and standing with our bags, or are we going to scramble and try to figure out what happens when it arrives? Because you know what, a few minutes later the train is pulling out of the station, and what are we going to be doing? And that's kind of what's going on. Is are we going to be ready when industry says we are prepared now and we would like to submit this electronically? We're doing everything, just like Mr. Weibel said, in a digital format. We've got building information models going on, but you know what? I still have to go to the plotter. We still have to maintain our plotters. It's kind of like maintaining that peculiar little 5 1/4 inch hard drive, because all your information is on those weird discs. It's the same thing. It's like maintaining your phonograph, your turntable at home, because you know what? I still got stacks of albums that I've had for years, and doggone it, I'm not going to go out and buy all CD versions or download all those albums now, because I got them. So I got to just figure out where to buy my next needle. And that's kind of what happens over time, and it is a shift. At the University of Wisconsin, just last week, they had their code refresher, and we introduced Wisconsin's intent and where we were headed with the building information modeling opportunities and model checking software. One of the bureau directors was there, and he says, he mentioned the think tank that we pulled together, and he says, 5 years ago we polled everybody here. Now check this out. So he pulled out the information of that poll that we did 5 years ago, and 5 years ago we had a quarter of the attendees, and we're talking hundreds of people. This year we had over 800 people there. Over a quarter of the attendees said that, in the next year or so, they would be able to submit, questions through email. Over the next year, they would like to see the state at least do electronic scheduling for plan review. And then the list went on and on. But what I'm getting at is that everything that they brought up in that survey 5 years ago, we're doing now. So the hope is that things continue to progress in that same way. The elected officials are the ones that really need to be educated on what's going on. That's one of the things we did in Wisconsin, too, as we've been moving forward. First thing we did is we met with the industry stakeholders. We met with the AGC. We met with the Association of Builders and Contractors. We met with the AIA. We met with the building owners and managers. We met with the American Consulting Engineers. And we wanted to know what was going on. And what was going on was very exciting. So exciting that shortly, just last week as well, literally this stuff is happening that live. Association of General Contractors had their annual Managers Day, and they asked me to come over and speak. Little did I know that they had the four perspectives there. They had the perspective of the contractor, the perspective of the architect, the perspective of the owner, represented by GSA, and they had myself there, the perspective from the local regulators. And industry is going there. The commitment is on the contractor side. Mortensen Construction says, you know what, if you can't get a BIM, we'll make it for you because we see the value in it in so many different ways. Those elected officials need to be educated as well, because following our stakeholders meeting, we then had the managers come together within Department of Commerce, Safety, and Buildings, and what we did is we introduced them to this concept. You have to remember, just like the plan reviewers of years ago that were working in our offices, and really, if you were to say you're going to start looking at plans in the CAD, it was a foreign language to them. It was a major shift in how they did their business. This was the same thing that needs to be done with elected officials and managers charged with really funding and moving technology forward. So what about the design side? The design side is exciting. What's happening? I'll put the AI hat on it. This is something that definitely has been on the we need to do this list for a long time. It's a major reduction in amount of time. It's a major reduction in amount of time waiting for things to be reviewed and approved. One form, so some of you that may be familiar with is called ComCheck, and what you do with ComCheck is you basically fill your information in, run it through a program, and it tells you if your building passes as far as the energy codes are concerned. Okay. What it does is it spits out a sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11. It says this building passes by 1%, 2%, or 3%, whatever it is. That design professional then signs. Here it is again. He signs with ink and stamps that ComCheck form. At the plan review side, that form is picked up. The reviewer looks at it, sees that the building passes, and he moves on. You might do a quick cursory check of the numbers and the percentages. You might then cross-reference that with the building that's in front of you. And if you're looking at a large convention center that's a glass box, and they've got a 25% glass number entered in on ComCheck, you might want to check and say, now wait a minute, I'm seeing a lot more open. But it's things like that are done. I mean, at the state level, I'm the auditor in the state of Wisconsin looking at this stuff. So just to fill you in, I mean that's kind of the practice, okay? Because you've got information, you've got credible, certified information that's being stamped by a design professional. You need to move on and look at the critical things. That same cultural shift is expected from the design industry when we continue to move forward with building information models being run through model checking software. If we have to use the word certified, plan checking software, model MCS, model checking software, then when it gives you the answer, that answer should then be good to move forward. Now, right now, we look at a 70% check against the codes. That means that there might be as much as 30% out there that's still going to be open to reviewer and human intervention, which should be expected and which can be expected. But if you look at the big picture and realize that a reviewer is only going to look at the plans for maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe it'll take a day to look at the plans, a large comprehensive set of plans that took months to create. How much of that plan is being reviewed as opposed to running it through a model check software where theoretically and quite frankly, honestly, it's looking at everything because it's taking that model, crunching it, and making sure that everything is in order. That is the actual reduction in errors and concept of resubmittal. Because right now in the state of Wisconsin, what we're preparing for is the fact that plans will be submitted, model check software response is going to be resubmitted, and how many people, why would you bother submitting plans and saying that, well, here's our submittal, but here's our readout from our model, our BIM checking software, and it says that this building has problems here, here, and here. And we're going to look at it and say, okay, then you need to fix that yet. So the efficiency is such. As far as interfacing with the building regulatory process, wait a minute, my computer just kicked out. Sorry about that, folks.
Well, actually, Henry, is this a good time for some questions?
Yeah, fire away.
Yeah, you've got 4. I didn't want to go too far down the path about getting them addressed, so we're not in a different subject. Number 1, in many jurisdictions, the majority of building permits relate to work in existing buildings. Alterations and change for occupancy. Is the building information model equally effective for existing buildings as for new buildings that start with a paper design?
What happens with existing architecture is that it has to be converted into a building information model. You need to have the digital format created. One example is what's happening currently, even with the new construction and addition concept that is being adopted, for example, firsthand from Mortensen, where they have a staff that actually will take 2D drawings and flat drawings and then put them into a building information model format. They'll use Revit software and actually create a BIM. For them, that is not being used for submittal and review purposes. It is being used for 4D and 5D. 4D being the scheduling and 5D being the financial end of it, the budgeting of the project. So they're using it for those controls. It is something that the owner is more often than not paying extra for, but the owner is understanding that this has great benefits down the road. So for change of use and alterations to existing buildings, to use building information modeling and model check software, you first need the building information model created.
Number 2, how will building information models address the alternative materials and methods provision?
Building information models are only as smart as what you put into them. So where alternative methods and materials are being suggested, that has to be built into the software. Or, again, the human intervention is never taken out of the process. So you still have the reviewers working with plans, working with documents, and ultimately releasing and approving. So when alternative methods and materials are being proposed, it is either included in the building information model itself, or it's being communicated, and that falls into that 30% down.
Number 3, could we address the issue of submittals by changing Chapter 1 of the ICC codes to include provisions in case someone wants to submit a BIM instead of paper?
That would be an awesome suggestion. We are right now, for the last 2 weeks, sitting here at the International Code Council, code change proposal hearings. I'm pretty sure that did not come up on the radar last week when we were doing the IBC General and Chapter 1 provisions. I will suggest that and bring that up with David Conover at the International Code Council, who is leading the Smart Codes and model checking software group. And the other thing is, the way the code process works, the person asking the question or anybody else can and probably should propose a code change to Chapter 1 to do that. And it would be then taken up and heard at, you might even be able to get it in Minneapolis in September, because we'll be into the public hearing phase now with all the code changes that were proposed. I'm not 100% sure, but you can check with the International Code Council. Go to ICCSAFE, ICCSafe.org, start there, and see if that can be added to the hearings in September to get the process moving along.
Fourth question. What does Model Check software rely on to do a code check of a BIM against codes?
Model checking software is quite frankly, starts with a dictionary. And to let you know where we're at with that, right now the International Energy Conservation Code has been completed. The technical provisions in Chapter 11 of the ADA has been completed. And just this weekend, the dictionary for Chapter 10 as far as egress has been completed. What it starts is the foundation of a dictionary, the foundation of common language, where terminology, common used words are put into this dictionary format. There's two groups, AC3 and Solibri, that are actually working on the software. Hang on a minute, sorry about that. Something went weird on our screen here.
That's okay.
And okay, everybody saw it. Okay, no problem. So anyway, they're actually working on the software package themselves. But as far as the International Code Council is concerned, it starts with our dictionary that is then used as the foundation for the model checking software. So the Solibri and AC3 are the two companies that are actually the vendors working with ICC in developing the model checking software itself. It is based on an industrial facilities class, IFC, and that is looking at developing a common foundation, a common language that all software will be able to communicate across the board.
Thanks. One comment was written in that the BIM is created for existing buildings to drive O&M enhancements. I think that was in reference at the time to the earlier question about if you can do it for existing buildings. And a final last question just came quickly in. Has BIM ever been used for local site plan requirements?
Not yet.
Okay. Coming soon.
Oh, exactly. And that's the biggest thing we've been working with here in the state of Wisconsin is first of all, work with the stakeholders. Second, work internally on the decisions we have to make. And the third and most important step, well, the most important step is meeting the needs of our stakeholders. But right on the heels of that is providing that at the local level, providing that service, providing the tools and support at the local level. One of the things that comes out of this is the simple e-permitting concept, right? Because what you've got is baby steps. First, people were excited about communicating with email. Then they were excited about being able to attach a graphic to email. Then they were excited about being able to schedule their appointment electronically. And then we said, wait a minute, if I'm spitting out Word documents, why can't I just spit out a permit and keep it all recorded somewhere on a hard drive? And that was one more step in a simple IT application. It saves the construction industry billions of dollars, and it really works in so many different levels. Not only am I being able to maybe through the internet acquire a permit and pay for it, but I'm also able to develop checklists for building inspectors and provide that opportunity to schedule my inspections electronically. So I've got an inspection staff in some communities around the country now that don't have to come into the office. They basically turn on their laptops and they've got their work orders and they are out in their districts working immediately with checklists and a full understanding electronic of what's going on.
Great, thanks. And someone did write in and say that they think that it is being used in Norway, but we will continue on. So I think we're caught up on the questions. Okay, great. And Mr. Weibel, are you taking over the what's being done section?
Well, actually, this was for you too, but I'm happy to do it.
I just wasn't sure because I know you were involved with the state of Oregon. Either way.
Well, yeah, maybe I can talk about a couple of these, and then you pick back up with
I'll jump into the Wisconsin
safety and work.
You bet.
Because the state of Oregon, is in the process of starting to implement a statewide e-permitting system which will link all existing e-permitting online systems within the state, and then give to building departments that do not yet have online permitting processes access to a system. And their vision is to build this out over a 10-year period, but ultimately to include within it electronic plan review capability throughout the state, as well as some real benefits for first responders, being able to access as-built designs when they roll upon a disaster site, and major benefits for mutual aid structures where different jurisdictions will be able to have their hardware and software all talk to each other, and then be able to move to the aid of a nearby community without having to worry about the compatibility of both the remote field inspection technology they're using or their permitting system. So it has some major benefits. They put a 4% surcharge through the state legislature a year ago to fund this, and this will be a major initiative to keep an eye on nationally and as well. Louisiana, in the wake of Katrina, we worked with them to produce an IT roadmap for their new building departments, and are working now to help them put in place uniform processes, administrative procedures in those parishes, now adding building code programs, which will then facilitate them being able to go out and do something somewhat similar over perhaps a longer period of time as Oregon is doing with the statewide e-permitting system. I have a similar system within all the parishes in Louisiana. Henry, you want to talk about your building safety network?
Yeah, this was a great opportunity that we came up with here in the state of Wisconsin. Now, first of all, like I said, we need to respond to the real stakeholders, to what the construction industry is looking for. We also in Wisconsin not only respond to those, but we also recognize that we've got agent municipalities throughout the state doing work on behalf of us. For the last couple of years that I've been involved as the auditor, I've always talked about having a conference and pulling those agent municipalities together to get everybody on the same page, because everybody, the thing is that you've got over 190 municipalities doing work in the state of Wisconsin on behalf of us. That means there's 190 ways that people are doing the right thing, and which is great on an individual basis, but in the large perspective of a consistent model. Just like we went to the model codes in the United States to have one code, coast to coast, to really provide economic competitiveness as well as a regulatory system that goes through a very efficient process. We have the same thing when you take it down to the level of state government and over 1,800 municipalities. We did that and said, now wait a minute, with the changing technologies and with the changing business model out there, we can do so much more. The Wisconsin Building Safety Network was dubbed. The Wisconsin Building Safety Network is nothing new. It's been around since 1914, but we just never named it, and we never got our arms around the thing to realize its potential. What that is all about is basically educating not just the people, the line staff, the people that are actually doing the reviews and inspections, but it's talking to the managers, it's talking to the mayors, it's talking to the administrators of all these communities, and educating them on that first piece that we talked about, where it's not only the tools and the cultural shift, but it's also educating those managers and decision makers in your community on what the benefits are. So what we did in the Wisconsin Building Safety Network was very exciting last year. We had Mr. Weibel come and speak and also be the keynote speaker to address streamlining and to address e-permitting and to address exactly what we're talking about here. We had the Insurance Service Organization, Ralph Dorio, come from New Jersey and speak to all these municipal leaders about what ISO is and what it means to have a robust and effective inspection community and working with your design and with your building owners. We also had the International Code Council. We had the insurance representative from Illinois come up. So there was a vast array of knowledge available for these managers so they can make some intelligent decisions. The Wisconsin Building Safety Network is going to have a conference this September, and we're going to continue to expand on that model to work further with educating our municipalities on what BIM is. Because a lot of us, it's still new. It's a foreign phrase. We're going to educate them on model checking software. We're going to educate them on e-permitting. We're going to educate them on so many more things that they could be doing as far as networking. It's part of a network. And the biggest part of this WBSN in Wisconsin is the fact that we're there to serve the network and to listen to the network. We're not there to steer the ship. just like with all of this stuff, government should be responsive to what the needs of the industry are and work with industry, and that's kind of what the Building Safety Network is in Wisconsin.
Let me take it from here, Henry, because I do want to give Judy an opportunity to talk about the FIATECH roadmap and their work.
Thank you.
And here are some quick screens on some summaries. Actually, I'll have to back up. But some of the things that we're doing as the Alliance, we're continuing to work on guides and surveys for elected officials, model procurement requirements. Each of these things was designed to provide information and tools that really help overcome the barriers we identified that jurisdictions have to, and indeed the construction industry has, to making greater use of information technology in the building regulatory process. And with that, for a building owner and operator perspective, and also talk about the relevance of all this to the FIATECH roadmap, I'll turn this over to Judith Passwaters from DuPont.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. I think in the interest of time, we're going to try to fly through this very quickly, so I apologize if we don't spend as much time on the slides, but we'd certainly be glad to take any questions that you have. Either send us an email or give us a call. So with that, Bob, go ahead and the slide. Basically, I'm going to talk about the regulatory process and its relationship with the FIATECH technology roadmap. I'm going to explain a little bit more about what that is. But from an owner's perspective, what I'm looking for is a way that the regulatory system can be effective and efficient and predictable. In other words, how can the regulatory system improve cycle time, improve the cost, and at the end of the day help DuPont get products into the hands of customers more quickly and more easily. I also then, and part of the reason DuPont joined the FIATECH roadmap was to try to address the whole life cycle concept of a facility. And what we're trying to do here this morning is to say there is this technology process or this business process, capital process, if you will, that begins with the concept of a facility and ends with the operation maintaining and eventually shutting down in that facility. And all through that entire process, regulatory processes, regulatory systems, regulatory needs are a big part of how effective that process is. So what Bob has up on the screen now is the FIATECH roadmap. FIATECH roadmap is something that was conceived back in October of 2001 by a group of owners, engineering firms, technology suppliers, universities, government agencies. We basically, about 30 of us got together in a room in San Antonio, Texas with a blank sheet of paper and said, if we could design the capital project process and as a highly automated, integrated system, what would that look like? And what you see now on the screen is what was pretty much developed back 7 years ago, so it hasn't changed that much. It is truly a vision. It's about a 130-page document, which you can get from FIATECH if you would like more detail. So what I'm going to do is very briefly try to go through this vision and relate it a little bit to what we will need from the regulatory systems if we truly want to achieve the vision we have in this map. So, Bob, if you go to the next, you're on the next slide. So we're going to talk about it element by element. There are 9 elements to the roadmap. And what I'm going to do then is pretty much take you through each element and then very briefly talk about the impact or the needs from a regulatory process. Element number 1 is really the planning part of any project. It's what we call in DuPont the front-end loading 1 and 2. What is it we need to put on the ground? What's its capacity? It's all of the relevant front-end planning. Where are we going to put it? What are the issues around the economy, the society, et cetera, in which part of the world we're going to put a plant. So it's the planning process, if you will. So if you go to slide 2, I'm going to also talk first about the automated design, element number 2, before we talk about the regulatory process. And I think you'll understand why we're doing it this way in just a minute. The automated design is really the production design. It's how you get your drawings, where you're going to store your drawings, what information those drawings are going to have on them, what are the needs in terms of the design part of the capital project process. So I'm going to leave it with that. Again, there's a lot more information about each of these elements if you would like to get a copy of the FIATECH Technology Roadmap. So let's talk about the regulatory system interface with the first two elements, the planning element and the automated design element. What we find here is that these elements are pretty much restricted by the current inability of building owners, designers, and contractors to share plans electronically with the building departments. And we've heard Bob speak to this. We've heard Henry talk about this. At present, there's only about 2% of the building departments in the nation that are accepting building and land use plans electronically. And less than 1% are actually conducting the true electronic plan reviews. Where we do have 2D reviews being done, building and planning departments are documenting reductions in plan review times of between 65 and 80% and are noting increased code compliance. So it's a huge cycle time improvement to be able to do this communication and do the regulatory process totally integrated to elements 1 and 2 of the FIATECH roadmap. So hopefully that gives you a flavor of how, as you go through this entire project process, you begin to see that getting through the regulatory part of the project is very significant, because even if we achieve the vision in this roadmap, it's similar to an analogy where you've got a 10-lane highway and you have to cross a 1-lane bridge. You know, no matter how well you automate the 10-lane highway or how good the 10-lane highway is, if you still have to go down and go through a bottleneck, and sometimes that bottleneck for us is the regulatory process, it really does decrease the efficiency and certainly the speed of how fast you can get a facility up and running. So let's go to element number 3 quickly. It's the integrated and automated procurement and supply network. It's really, this is about your procurement plan, your supply plan, how you're going to get the materials that you need to the site, when you're going to get them, who's going to supply them. It's the whole supply chain for the materials in the construction process. So if you go to that 7, I want to talk about the new materials, methods, and products. Again, this is another element that underlies the entire project process. And it's really, I think somebody mentioned earlier, I think it was you, Henry, that said, how do you get, how do you become aware of what new materials are out there, what best practices, what products, equipment, how do we in this industry become aware of what are those new technologies, new materials, new best practices that we should be able to use to facilitate an improvement in the productivity of both the design, construction, and even operations of our facility. So the vision had a placeholder for acquiring essentially that information, putting it in a clearinghouse and making it available to the practitioners. So then if you'll go to the next slide, so how does the regulatory process that we're talking about this morning interface with elements 3 and 7? Again, what you're looking at here is that early adoption of new materials and methods throughout the entire project process could be significantly strengthened if the building departments were able to more easily and quickly access data that enables them to speed the review and approval of new products, materials, and methods. So if we come upon these new materials we want to use, and the building departments had a way to validate those quickly, we could take advantage of those new materials much faster and also learn more about what they can and cannot do. So a significant opportunity to interface between the regulatory process and elements 3 and 7. Okay, Bob, moving on to element number 4, intelligent and automated construction job site. This is really about the material tracking, your job planning, equipment selection and use. It's everything you need to know as you're going through the construction phase of your project, and it's really providing the intelligence, the data, the information aligned with the materials and the labor so that you can quickly and efficiently do the construction on your site. So how does the regulatory process interface, and what are the barriers today that we see around element number 4 in the regulatory process? Building departments do not currently really comprehend the full benefits of technology adoption and use. We've talked a little bit about what those look like and how effective they are, but the feeling from an owner's perspective is there aren't many building departments that really comprehend how important this use of technology is. Phased project construction approvals and rapid scheduling and conducting of field inspections would support more effective overall projects and evens out the inspector's workload. Again, workload balancing, can we do a partial inspection versus the entire inspection, but being able to work through those types of dynamics around inspections. Less than 4% of building departments across the nation currently even allow or are able to do phased construction approvals. And less than 5% of the building departments are really using IT to facilitate these remote field inspections through the use of things like laptop computers or PDAs or in some cases even smart cell phones. So again, the trend is we're doing it pretty much the way we've always done it, with a lot of paper and not much integration of the technology being used to build the facility and the regulatory process being used to give us the permission, the permits, and the inspections that we need to run the facility. Okay, next slide please, Bob. Intelligent self-maintaining and repairing operational facilities. This is element 5 of the roadmap. This is really being able to use the data that you collected throughout the project process to enable the safe, secure, and optimized maintenance and operation of the facility. So what's the impact? Let's go to element 6 first, because they're very closely aligned and the same regulatory issues arise in both elements. This is the real-time project and facility management coordination and control element of the roadmap, which again is a part that goes across the entire life cycle of the facility and the capital project process. And this is really a fully integrated facility planning and management system. That's the tools and the processes that you're going to need to plan, control, review the design, construction, and then the ongoing operation of the facility. So now let's talk about the impact of elements 5 and 6 in the regulatory process. Most state and local building departments do not have ready access to a means to interconnect with current operating technologies and other data that's relevant to the building maintenance and repair. Example is, does the repair comply with the local building code or have the necessary product approval? So that integration typically doesn't exist today. You know, for example, building sensor technology does have the ability to monitor and report on the facility status, not only to preempt periodic operational disruptions, but it actually, many of the automated systems in buildings support first responders in case of an emergency. But we're not typically integrated with the regulatory process in the state or the local jurisdiction around that type of response and around that type of preventive or emergency handling. Lack of automated administration and enforcement of building codes governing the building rehabilitation and renovation. Again, another lack of integration that severely restricts or slows down the entire renovation process, because a lot of what we would apply this project process to is renovations of existing facilities, not just greenfield facilities. So the regulatory process needs to have a way to integrate both new facilities as well as major and minor renovations where you, again, can get extremely reduced cycle times because of the ability to integrate the information electronically. Okay? So let's go to element 8, the technology and knowledge-enabled workforce. This is about having the people skills to design, build, and operate a facility that are trained in a way that they can use the roadmap. And again, we're going to need to have the same in the regulatory process. You're going to have people in that system that are trained with the latest IT technologies and capability and are used to working in an electronic format rather than a paper format. So again, if you look at element 8 and the regulatory process, the existing state and local licensing certification requirements do not recognize new technologies, again, electronic seals on plans, for example. And in this case, the training requirements for building officials and plan reviewers, inspectors, they don't necessarily encourage or reinforce the ability to use information technologies as part of their work responsibilities. So that's a piece of a training that would have to occur for the regulatory process to integrate effectively with the technology roadmap. And last but not least, so let's look at element number 9. This is the facility genealogy. This is a repository for collecting and storing and retrieving the life history of the facility. So it's your data warehouse, if you will. And if you look at the integration of the regulatory process with this, what you find is it's really very important to the way, for example, first responders gain access to information about a building when they come up, when they roll up to the building as part of a disaster situation. At present, the information gap has been cited by NIST, and they're working with Carnegie Mellon University to work on a project to develop a database, to use something like this repository that first responders can have access to and readily use. However, without careful realignment, state and local government regulations may either support or hinder implementation of such an interface. So, again, extremely important to your local community and cities and the facilities in those jurisdictions. So this has been a very quick review. The FIATECH roadmap is really aimed at how we apply technology in developing the new methods, approaches, materials, and applications to the entire building life cycle. That includes the design, commissioning, operation, maintenance, and recycling. And the question is, who is going to look after the application of new technology and the development of new methods and process approaches for the regulatory of construction in our communities? So, turn it back over to you, Bob. I know it was very...
Are there any questions that have come in for Judy? Nicole?
It always helps when I'm not muted. There is one question, but I don't know who would want to answer it. The question is the ICC evaluation service cooperating with the Smart Codes effort at ICC and basing their reviews and evaluation reports on BIM?
And the answer is yes. ICC is very much involved with those processes. So,
all right, that's all we have for questions.
Okay. Let me quickly step you through the next piece. And by the way, you can go to the FIATECH website, click on projects. You'll find the Streamlining project there. And if you click on the Streamlining project, it will actually take you to a fairly good white paper that describes a lot of what Judy went through in a little more detail, and also there's a survey there for those of you that are in the private sector on the call, which really is sort of a kind of a pain indicator. How much is regulatory inefficiency currently costing your company or community? Please feel free to fill that in, and that's going to be information we're going to use and report back when we do a presentation, and Henry will be with us at the FIATECH meeting coming up in New Orleans. Our presentation is at 3:30 in the afternoon of the 1st of April, and we're going to talk a bit about this. Let me quickly close with some of the tools that are already existing that you can use with your elected officials. We have a pretty robust toolkit that is available for downloading online that is, again, targeted at elected officials, one-page summaries, lots of pictures, big print. And then we have gone through a series of white papers, which we've done on electronic plan submission review and tracking. We're doing another one, which is sort of a step-by-step approach towards putting it in place. National Model Plan Review Process for Replicable Buildings is a work group. Those of you in states with uniform statewide building codes, Henry is such a state in Wisconsin. The ability to have a building that is a truly replicable, that Marriott Courtyards, a lot of the hotel chains, some of the other commercial chains really do repeat the same building over and over. To have that prototype actually approved once and be able to be used statewide, with then obviously the local siting piece being done at the local level, would certainly speed the process for everybody. And then a streamlining roadmap that we're talking about really here that interfaces what are the things that need to be done for the regulatory system to interface with the FIATECH roadmap. how you can use these materials. Clearly contact your elected officials, share the tools, and we would certainly hope that if you aren't a member of FIATECH and the Alliance, that you take a look at our materials and consider getting involved with us as an active member in the organization. And I'm going to skip over, but when this is loaded up on the FIATECH website, you're going to love this, because we actually have the top 10 reasons why jurisdictions don't streamline and apply IT. And I'm just going to cut through these to just go to the final. But this is a teaser for you to take a look at this. There are jurisdictions doing this. The good news is this is Mecklenburg County. I know we have people on the phone from Charlotte, and they have a vision of actually integrating into their electronic plan review what the ICC is doing in terms of the electronic plan check tool, as well as being able to then move BIM into it. This is a little chart they produced showing their vision as to where the map they're plotting to take them into 2010 and beyond. And just a closing thought, the place you really see the benefits of all of this coming together is when you're responding to and recovering from a disaster. And we hope that you will all join us in this work. And I'll take any last-minute questions come in. Here's basic contact information. We will work at posting for those of you on the call. Also information in terms of both Henry's and Judy's contact information if you have any further questions on their part of the presentation.
We don't have any other questions, so good job. You guys were so thorough that everyone's questions were answered, or your phone will be ringing off the hook this afternoon. But I did want to thank all 17 who attended this call this morning, and I wanted to remind you that each Tuesday from 11 to 12, FIATECH has a webinar featuring different emerging technologies and their projects, such as this one. The next will be on the 7th, and we will be doing one on one of our members' e-builder. And you'll be receiving information tomorrow on that. And I just wanted to say thanks again to Henry and Bob and Judy. And we will be posting this this afternoon. So thanks, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you very much, Nicole.
All right.